So today we are going to take a deep dive into the world of diesel fuel system additives with a bunch of help from Lakespeed Jr., otherwise known as the Motor Oil Geek out on YouTube. Lake and I kind of got hooked up about 9 months ago because him and I shot a very similar video on engine oil additives. I tested Hot Shot Secret FR3 and he tested pretty much everything, all the major stuff out on the market, and we basically both came to the conclusion that, you know what, engine oil additives are a big waste of time. Lake actually reached out to me after that video and just said, hey, if there's anything you ever want to collaborate on, you know, just let me know. I'd be more than open to it. So I emailed him back and said, yeah, I've been trying to figure out how to best test diesel fuel additives for literally years. And unfortunately for me is I don't have the assets at my disposal to be able to properly test this stuff. Lucky for us that Lake does. So we're gonna hop on a call with Lake a little bit later on, and we're gonna go over exactly the results from using every one of these products in your straight up pump diesel fuel. We're gonna test the straight up pump diesel fuel untreated, and then we're gonna use each one of the products in that same batch of diesel fuel to see how much change it has in the performance of the diesel fuel overall. Now, before we hop on this call with Lake, I want to just sort of lay out real quick how the very basics of how a diesel fuel system works. Because if you have a basic understanding of how a diesel fuel system works, it's going to make what we're going to talk about a little bit later probably make a little bit more sense. So a diesel fuel system, guys, runs at extraordinarily high pressure. Generally, the newer the vehicle is, the higher the pressure that you're going to see in the high pressure side of the diesel fuel system. So essentially the way the system works is you have the fuel back in the tank, makes its way up to a high pressure pump that is bolted to the engine. The high pressure pump is ultimately responsible for naturally creating the high pressure in the diesel fuel system. Now, in the case of this 2.8 liter Duramax truck that I own, at wide open throttle, the high pressure fuel pump delivers over 30,000 PSI of fuel pressure. And the only thing that actually lubricates that high pressure pump is the fuel itself. And the reason that I bring this up is if you guys go out on Google and you start Googling something called Bosch CP4 failures, that is a high pressure fuel pump that has a pretty bad reputation about basically coming apart due to a lack of lubricity in the fuel. So essentially what's going on here is the auto manufacturers are steadily increasing the injection pressure in a diesel engine because it reduces the amount of emissions because you get a better atomization of the fuel at that higher pressure. And it also makes the engine quieter because, again, you're getting a finer atomization of the fuel. So auto manufacturers are steadily increasing that high pressure in the diesel fuel system. But the fuel itself really hasn't changed since 2006. In 2006, actually the lubricity of diesel fuel kind of took a nosedive with the introduction of ultra low sulfur diesel. So now you have auto manufacturers installing these super high pressure fuel pumps being lubricated purely by the fuel that they're consuming, and the fuel that they're consuming doesn't have that much lubricity to it. Just to give you guys an idea of what the cost implications are of having a high pressure pump failure in a modern diesel truck. I did some Googling on a 6.7 Power Stroke truck. Just the parts alone to repair a fuel system failure in a 6.7 Power Stroke truck, the parts are over $5,500. That is a brand new pump, all new lines, and all new injectors, because when that high pressure pump comes apart, it sends metal shrapnel throughout the high pressure side of the fuel system. So you have to replace all the injectors and all the lines in addition to the pump that went bad. It is a extremely expensive repair if you were to pay somebody to do that repair for you. The estimates that I saw online were between $10,000 and $15,000 by the time you add in labor for a high pressure fuel system failure. So all of these products here are designed to increase the lubricity of the fuel, which in theory should make the pump live longer. We intend to prove that. So hopefully that, guys, gives you a little bit of background knowledge as to why these products matter and why we're doing the testing that we're doing here. So with that, let's hop on the call with Lake and start going down the rabbit hole of trying to see, do any of these products do what they say that they're going to do?
Okay. So for those of you that aren't aware who I'm speaking with, Lake, go ahead and introduce yourself, give them a little bit of your background and what some of your knowledge is and stuff. Lake and I kind of got hooked up with, him and I tested oil additives at the same time and didn't really realize that we were testing oil additives at the same time until I saw his video come out about, a week and a half before mine. And I was like, oh, well, of course, he completely blew my video out of the water. So after that, we kind of got hooked up with some stuff. So Lake, take it away.
Well, us geeks think alike, right? We were both in the
exactly.
same mind frame,
What's the ratio
I'm
from
Lake
geeks to nerds?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You have to be thinking alike and honed in. It's like, hey, wait, these are additives or something, right? And we came to the conclusion, both of us, that, motor oil additives really aren't that great. But fuel additives, there's a difference there, especially diesel fuel additives, because diesel fuel, especially here in the US, is unlike diesel fuel in other parts of the country, namely Europe. So in Europe, you can go to the gas station and you can buy regular diesel or premium diesel. And the premium diesel actually has a more robust additive package in it. Of course, here in the US, there are some, they call them top tier diesel. And you may be wondering, why were you yapping on about additives? Well, the key thing is, once we went to ultra low sulfur diesel here in the US, which was well over a decade ago, if not probably 2 decades ago, that reduction in sulfur basically compromised, if you will, some of the lubrication properties of diesel. And for diesel injectors, that became a big issue. And of course, fuel pumps is now the biggest thing that we see, because in the old days, you had the big pintle style injectors that were very sensitive to that change and that loss of lubricity in the fuel. Of course, the diesel industry did respond and added in some tests, which we'll cover in this video. We'll show you the results of those lubricity tests that are now standard for diesel fuels. But the fuel pumps, this is a bigger issue that people are dealing with all the time now, that while the injectors have changed and they've gone to piezoelectric style injectors, which aren't as sensitive now to the lubricity of the fuel, the things you have to worry about are going to be injector deposits, so detergency. But then again, that lubricity still matters for the fuel pumps. So these are the two things. And the question is, do these fuel additives, are they all the same? So we know that off the rack, pump diesel fuel can be, we'll call it, somewhat lacking in some of these areas. And these additives can help. The reality is, which ones give you the most bang for your buck, or pretty much are they all the same? It doesn't matter. Just buy the cheapest one and rock on. We're going to try to answer that for you.
Hopefully. I did some light Googling, and like a Bosch CP4 fuel pump and a 6.7 Power Stroke, it's a $10,000 to $15,000 repair if that pump comes apart. So you're talking a serious amount of money. So if you can prevent a fuel system failure like that with an additive, it totally makes sense, which is ultimately what kind of spurred this video.
Yeah, you can buy a lot of additive for $10,000.
Yeah,
you can buy a lot of
I did some math. I did some math on that actually. So I figured if you ran the truck for 300,000 miles and you got 10 miles a gallon, using the most expensive additive, it would be $7,500 worth of additive.
Okay.
So you're still net positive $2,500 after using this. And you guys will see once we go over some of these results that it does in fact make a lot of sense to use an additive in a diesel truck.
Okay, so let's pull up the list of all the additives we tried here. So these are our candidates that we pulled up. So we got the Archoil, got the AR6500, and then we also have the PowerService, and that was the Kleen Boost, correct?
Yes, all of these additives were considered like an everyday diesel additive that you would use in every tank of fuel.
Okay, right, got it. And then we got the XDP All-in-one, the Stanadyne Performance Formula, and then the hot shots, everyday diesel treatment. Again, I've seen that at like Walmart. So these are ones you can get
pretty much anywhere.
Right. They're pretty widely available. So the thing we looked at, just doing the regular lab chemical analysis is we want to say, okay, what kind of additives are in there? So we're talking about motor oil and oil additives and stuff. You're typically things are like, zinc, phosphorus, moly, the regular additives that are in oil. Those aren't going to be in diesel fuel additives or any kind of fuel additive typically, because you don't want to have ash, especially with particulate filters on the vehicles. If there's ash that you're putting into the fuel, that's going to load the particulate filter and cause issues. So you don't want to have anything essentially metallic in the oil. Anything that can create ash, you don't want that in the fuel, I should say. And so we kind of wanted to review that and see right off the bat what's there. And the other thing too, we actually ran the fuel dilution, the distillation, just to kind of see, was there a difference in the carrier as well? Because essentially most fuel additives are going to have a carrier fluid that basically incorporates the active chemistry. So you're going to have the molecules that are going to be doing the work. They're going to provide the lubricity. They're going to provide the detergency, things like that. But they're going to be mixed in a carrier, because if you actually had a bottle of just the active chemistry, it'd be itty bitty tiny. So the cost of packaging is already more expensive typically than the cost of the actual active ingredient. In this case, at least when you have a big bottle, it makes you feel better. There's a bunch of carrier in there. So you can see some differences between all of these and that. And then one thing I want to point out real quick is that two of them, both the XPD and the Hot Shots, contain a little bit of potassium. And we do see that at Speed Diagnostics with the used oil analysis. When people are using these products in their fuel, we do see that, because there is fuel dilution, fuel that gets by the rings and gets into the oil, we can see that potassium coming through into the oil analysis. So that's what we use these. Oh, hey, if you're using one of these products, we already know that it's going to be there, so we kind of write it off. The only thing I would say that I don't love about it is that potassium is also in coolant. So if you have a head gasket leak, usually the first thing you're going to see before you ever see water or glycol in the oil, you're typically going to see the potassium and sodium pop up. And with the modern coolants, there's a little more potassium than sodium. So this would hide that slightly. You have to rely more on the sodium level to be that early warning sign. So that's the only downside of this. Just got to say that, right? As an oil analyst, I hate anything that gives me a false positive. It gets under my skin, right? But yeah, so only 2 of the 5 actually had that. The other ones don't. And the one weird one was the iron levels, and we actually reran that sample just to make sure, because that was
in the Archoil.
Archoil, crazy high iron number, and it repeated. So I don't know if that just happened to be a random bottle that had something in there. I don't know, right? We have to go probably buy several bottles of it,
right?
Different batches and date codes, and sort through it to see, does that repeat overall? That's just a really weird outlier result. And the thing is, we have customers that use that product in the used oil analysis, and we don't see higher levels of iron in their samples, at least that I'm aware of. Nothing crazy like this.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It makes me think this is an anomaly. It's not real. But, again, you have to do way more testing.
Yeah, we'd have to buy 5 batches and test all the batches. And
yeah, and you need to have, like I say, you run your vehicle, run it with it and without it several times. And the thing is, you have to run multiple tanks of fuel without it to get it out. That's one thing when it comes to fuel additives that I don't think many people realize, that when you put a fuel additive in one tank of fuel, just because you ran that tank out and you refilled, that does not mean that additive is gone from the system. Usually additives will persist for several tanks.
Okay.
Especially the more dense the material is, the longer it persists. So All right. Any comments or thoughts here before we move on to a little more?
I don't think so. I think you pretty much covered everything. You know, when I sent these samples to Lake, we were just trying to basically see, are these all the exact same thing in a different bottle? And just based on what we're seeing here, we knew that, you know what, we needed to go down this rabbit hole a little bit further, because clearly these are not all the same formula.
Right. And this is really confirmed by the IR trace. So this is the chemical fingerprint of the additive. And we see here that spike over here on the left-hand side where it's marked carrier fluid, that is just what it says. It's the carrier fluid. And then you can see those little spikes over there to the right-hand side. That is the additive chemistry. And we can see that this was the Archoil. And as we flip through these, you're going to see that each of them are really different. Not a one of them is even remotely the same. And yeah, you can just see, right? That's like, you don't even need a whole lot of explanation. The Hot Shots has got a really different carrier fluid than the XPD, than the PowerService, than the Archoil. I mean, there is conclusively, none of these are really remotely near the same. So the question then becomes, well, how do they work? And we decided to send the samples off to Southwest Research, because this is pretty easy lab analysis. We're just looking at the chemistry of the product. To know what it actually does takes, you know, heavy lifting that, I'll call it, most labs don't have that level of technology and testing in-house. So fortunately, Southwest Research is down in San Antonio, Texas. They're one of the largest independent research labs in the world. And for here in the US, I mean, pretty much every oil company uses them to do third-party independent testing and validation of products, including things like fuel specs. So they have the high-frequency reciprocating rig that does the wear test that is part of the ASTM diesel standard. Again, going back to our earlier discussion, you know, the industry knows that when they went to ultra low sulfur diesel, that it created a wear problem. They responded and they added in the high frequency reciprocating rig. It's a wear test where it's basically a ball and a flat, and they can measure the wear that way. So they added that test, and they added a minimum so that when any diesel you buy anywhere in the US has to have a minimum cetane, we'll cover that in a second, and a minimum wear scar size. If it's larger than a certain size, it won't pass. And these devices are at the terminals where the diesel fuel comes through the pipeline, and they check these things before that fuel is released to the public to make sure it meets these minimum specs. So we decided to run those exact same tests on just regular old diesel fuel that was bought locally in San Antonio, and then had them add these products to that diesel. And they did follow the treat rates that were written on the bottles, which there was some variation there in terms of what was recommended.
There was, and I looked at that a little bit, and they were kind of all over the place. And the other thing is, there's actually 2 treat rates on each bottle. So they have like a standard dose, and then they have a performance dose.
And we had them use the standard dose on all of them.
Okay.
Because that standard dose is going to have the least potential negative impact on DPF regens. So the more additive you use, typically, is going to increase the number of DPF regens. And that's really not really good for the fuel economy. And it can be really bad for the oil, depending upon what kind of vehicle it is. I know a lot of the 6.7 Power Strokes and stuff, they regen quite frequently, and they basically put a lot of fuel in the oil because of that. So we put it at the everyday, you know, just the maintenance level for this. So if you went to the higher level, it might skew the results a little bit changing. But the reality is, I think most people are going to be using it at this level. And, you know, what I've learned in doing this for many, many years, more is rarely better when it comes to chemistry.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I've always seen. So let's pull these up. Okay. So we're going to break it back down into a couple of areas. They have two different tests. That first group, that D6079, that is that high frequency reciprocating rig. That's the wear scar. And then we basically, it has it at the fuel temperature. Then we see the major axis, the minor axis, and then basically in microns, what that wear scar is. Because it's looking at just the width and the length of that wear scar that's happening in that reciprocating rig. And then we had the cetane number. And again, they went to just, so they went to Valero and they bought just Valero pump diesel just locally in San Antonio. And what we see is that the combined result wear scar is 490 microns. So I believe the spec, I have to go look it up. I got it written over here. I think the max on that wear scar is 500.
I believe it was 500 or 520. I was Googling it before we hopped on the call.
Yeah. I think, it's either one of those two. It's either 500 or 520. So it's right in that range. So you can see that the major axis one is 520, but the minor axis is 460. The result overall was 490. So it meets that requirement. And then oddly enough, with a pump minimum of 40, this stuff came out at 57.6. So it was pretty high cetane right from the go. Pretty interesting. But, that also kind of shows that the crude source that they use has a big impact on what that cetane value is, because if you have a crude that's more paraffinic, it'll probably have a little bit different natural cetane value than if you have one that's more naphthenic. That's just kind of the way those things go. The straighter the chain, the higher the cetane will be. The more branched it is, the lower the cetane will be. It's like the opposite of octane. When you have straight chains with octane, it pushes it low. If you have branched, it pushes it high. So you can flip it on its head. So looking at that, when we go down the list, looking at that wear scar, that last column over before we get to cetane, you see that the hot shots every day, it dropped it from 490 down to 450. That was a pretty good jump right there. Then the Archoil pushed it down to 360. And I know that product's pretty popular. We tend to, just from the oil analysis side, Andrew, I see that product being listed in the notes as a product people are using more so than any other one brand when it comes to diesel fuel. So that one seems to have a pretty good following out there. And we can see that, it did it. I mean, it moved it from 490 down to 360. That was pretty good. The PowerService, the Diesel Kleen Boost, that one, again, you find that one everywhere. I've used that one a lot in my old diesels and stuff. It pushed it down to 430, which was good. But the one that knocked it out of the park is the XPD All-in-one.
Yeah.
That chopped it like in half. That was impressive.
Yeah. So I did a bunch of calculating as far as like cost per treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And the XPD is like 25 cents a gallon, whereas something like the Hot Shots, which was the cheapest, the Hot Shots I have, it was 5 cents a gallon. So it really, basically, good ingredients cost money. It's basically what it comes down to.
Getting what you pay for.
Right.
How about that? And in the Stanadyne actually increased it slightly. That was a bit of surprise to me. Now, we could probably run these tests 5 times. That 10 microns might be.
That hit me right in the feels because that's what I was using in my truck. And my thought process was, well, Stanadyne makes fuel system components. They must know what the fuel system needs. And turns out that logic was a little flawed, but live and learn, I guess.
Yeah, it really didn't seem to change it much at all. I mean, I guess we were being fair in terms of repeatability. It's essentially, it didn't change, right? That was probably within the margin of error, repeatability in the test, what it did in terms of, wear protection, which again, you'd have thought that product would have been, I would have expected that one to have done better just based on its history and things
Right.
like that. But then we look at the cetane improvement results, and now it's important, and I can't say this specifically about diesel. So what I'm about to say is based on my experience with gasoline. And when it comes to gasoline, it comes to octane improvers, there's more of a lift in octane improvement for the same treat rate of additive, right? We're keeping the treat rate of additive the same.
Mm-hmm.
You'll get more lift from a lower octane fuel. So if you put in an octane booster into, say, 83 octane gasoline, it's going to move it up more than if you put it into 93 octane gasoline.
Got it.
Now, I don't know if that's the same for diesel or not. That's not somewhere I've got a lot of experience. So the change could be greater if you were talking about a fuel that was, 40 or 41 or 42 cetane versus one that's 57. I don't know. But back to this one, the XPD did a pretty daggum good job. It didn't give the most lift. The PowerService one gave it the most lift in terms of it went from 57.6 to 63.8. So that's the largest lift. But the XPD wasn't very far behind.
Right.
And all of them did move the needle in that direction.
Yeah.
And all the labels said they were, they had some level of cetane improvement, and all of them did move it in the right direction, at least.
Yep. And I think the big thing is with cetane, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Lake, but from what I've read and experienced a little bit, it seems like if you boost the cetane in a diesel, it's going to regen less. You're going to have less deposits in the EGR system because you're having a more complete burn of the fuel. And that's ultimately, when you're having emission system problems, that's one of the big things that people talk about is, oh, my EGR system's all plugged up. Well, if you would put an additive in, you probably would have reduced the amount of buildup that you're going to have in that DPF and the EGR system over a long period of time.
That's absolutely true. When you can get the burn to start sooner, it will burn more completely, which means you're going to have fewer deposits and less soot. And all those things are going to be easier on your EGR, and they're going to be easier on your DPF, which I hate to say it, but that's the real weakness of these modern diesels. It is not the internal parts of the engine. It's all the emission stuff bolted onto them.
Yep. 100%.
So if anything you can do to help improve that, it's going to be a good thing. And I say this is pretty much a slam dunk that I'd say there's a few products here on that list that people can make their own decision. Man, they work. It's moving the needle in the right direction. You're providing protection, and you're increasing the cetane, so you're going to improve your combustion. Those are both big wins. And the great thing is, like I said, most of these things are pretty easy to get. Not that hard to find. So it's and really, like I said, $7,500 is what you'd spend.
So if you ran, like I said, I calculated 300,000 miles at 10 miles a gallon, and you would spend $7,500 on the XDP. So
the most expensive one is still $7,500, but it's $10,000 to $15,000 to replace a fuel pump.
And there's guys, you can go out and look on Google. There's guys that have had to replace those fuel pumps at 100,000 miles.
Right.
That might not even make it 300,000 miles in an ideal situation. So,
yeah, it's pretty cheap insurance, it looks to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was cool, right? It's neat. Thank you so much for organizing all of this. This is pretty cool to be able to get that stuff done,
Well, this is one of those things, Lake, that I have a whiteboard in my office, and if I have an idea, I just write it down on the whiteboard. I have had this specific idea on this whiteboard, I'm not kidding, for like 3 years. And the problem is I don't have a good way to test it.
Yeah.
I would rather not test something than put out bad information.
Oh,
So
100%.
you know
Yeah,
what I
I'm
mean?
with you.
I mean, yeah, I could sit here and make YouTube videos and get YouTube views for it, but I don't want to be the guy that's putting out bad info. So that's why once I got hooked up with you, I was like, okay, maybe Lake has some contacts that we can start looking at something like this, because it's been weighing on my mind for literally like 3 years. So I highly appreciate all the work you helped me with this.
Wow, it's no problem, man. You and I have the same mindset. Again, our names are similar in terms of our channels, but there's more similarities than just that. It's that we're here to help.
Right.
My whole goal, the whole reason I'm here showing up, is I want to help other consumers make educated decisions and not get caught up in the marketing hype. And so they spend the money on the stuff that matters, not on the stuff that doesn't matter. And like you said, in this case, this is a big lift in terms of those results right there. That's thousands and thousands of dollars worth of testing to get to that point.
Oh yeah, guys,
it's not easy to do that.
Put this in perspective, guys, what this costs. I looked at doing this myself, and the problem is, so to run the wear scar test was $400 a sample. The cetane was another $400 a sample. So just to get a control sample, it's $800. So
Yeah.
What is that? You have 5 different additives there at $800 a piece. Like, it's not cheap. And the amount of views that somebody on YouTube would have to get out of this to be able to break even, it's ridiculous. Like, it's just not feasible.
Yeah, YouTube math doesn't work. We're not Mr. Beast, right? And there's no sponsors here. They're going to go pay for that, right? So it's like, but the good thing is, that we have some connections down at Southwest Research, and they've been really good to me and help us out with a lot of stuff in the past. So it made sense to help to go back, spend the money with those guys, and do this to help move forward, because this is just, I think, the beginning, right? That same tests can be run for gasoline additives. Now they have to modify it and do a little bit, but I think there's a lot of good that can come from establishing, this kind of baseline that says, okay, everybody watching on YouTube, if you really want to know real science, real facts that you can have confidence in, it takes this kind of level of testing. So if you're not seeing this kind of testing, you probably don't want to trust those results, because it's not in a controlled environment. It's not following the same procedures. Again, both of these tests are the exact same test that are run every single day on every gallon of diesel fuel sold in the US.
So I think that's about it, isn't it, Lake? That's, I think the cat's out of the bag at this point. Yeah, I mean, there's not much else to say, but yeah. I already went out and bought my jug before everybody else did. So
there you go. Yeah,
because I figured there's going to be a run on this stuff after this video comes out. So
I had to go get some for my dad's diesel too. He's got a dually. He hauls around to the racetracks and everything. And yeah, I know what I'm getting for him for Christmas now.
I appreciate all the work you helped me put in with this, Lake. Listen to Lake and go to Lake's channel and go subscribe, please, because the amount of work that he did here is absolutely insane. There's absolutely no way that I couldn't have done this without him. So the least that I can do is tell my audience, go check out Lake if you guys aren't already subscribed, which if you're not subscribed, I don't know why you aren't, because Lake, you're the reason that I don't talk about oil on this channel. Because
I'm sorry about that, man.
I mean, I can't. There's no way.
Yeah, well, we're trying, right? And I think this is like the first of probably a lot of things where you and I can collaborate, because you have a lot of resources and things that I don't have, and so hopefully together we can help, make the YouTube world a better place, right?
That's the ultimate goal, right?
That's it.
Put more information out there and let people make their own decision. That's all you can do.
That's right.
All right, Blake. Thank you very much.
No, thanks, Andrew.
Take care.
So guys, like I said, please go down in the description, check out Lake's channel, go hit subscribe, because like I said, Lake is the reason that I do not talk about motor oil on this channel, because Lake has forgotten more about motor oil than what I know. So if you want information on, what the best oil is, how to do an oil analysis, how to read an oil analysis, anything like that, I'm gonna refer you over to Lake's channel, and he's gonna be able to, take you guys through that way better than what I can. The next thing is, guys, I would appreciate it if you would, like I said, go check out Lake's channel, but also, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, just interact with this video in some way, shape, or form, because ultimately your interaction with this video is what drives views on YouTube. So Lake and I literally just gave you $5,000 worth of testing. If you do the math on what we just gave you on testing all of these products, each sample costs $800 a piece. The lubricity test was $400 a piece. The cetane test was $400 a piece. So each one of these products costs $800 a piece to be able to give you the results that we just gave you. So if you guys could go click a button in exchange for $5,000, I would highly, highly appreciate it. So if you go down and do that, thank you. Now what I want to get into a little bit is going to be some of the cost analysis here. So first of all, I want to take a look at the treat rate for each product. So what I did was I went to the back of each bottle, looked at the instructions, and checked out, the treat rate for each product. And I tried to convert it into math that kind of everybody could understand. And what I mean by that is, what is the treat rate per 25 gallons? So the chart that I have on the screen now is showing you what the treat rate is for each product over 25 gallons of diesel fuel. So the Hot Shot Secret product has a treat rate of 1 ounce to 25 gallons. The Archoil product has a treat rate of 2.5 ounces to 25 gallons. The PowerService product was the highest treat rate of anything here at 8.3 ounces to 25 gallons. The Opti Lube was 6.25 ounces to 25 gallons. And finally, the Stanadyne was 6.4 ounces to 25 gallons. The next thing I want to take a look at here for a second is cost per gallon. So let's say, for example, you're paying $3.50 a gallon for your diesel fuel. How much per gallon does using one of these additives cost in addition to that $3.50 fuel cost? So the Hot Shot Secret adds 5 cents a gallon. The Archoil adds 11 cents a gallon. The PowerService adds 10 cents a gallon. The Opti Lube adds 25 cents a gallon, and the Stanadyne adds 15 cents a gallon. So for example, like if you were paying, like I said, $3.50 a gallon for your diesel fuel at the treat rate that I just told you, the additional 5 cents a gallon would naturally put it at $3.55 to use the Hot Shot Secret. Or like if you were running the Opti Lube, your fuel cost would go from $3.50 a gallon to $3.75 a gallon. Hopefully that makes those numbers a little bit easier to digest when you start talking about cost per treatment and cost per mile, things like that. So the final cost analysis that I want to get into a little bit is going to be total cost over the lifetime of the vehicle. So what I did was I took 300,000 miles and divided it by 10 miles a gallon. That gives you a total of 30,000 gallons. So that truck that gets 10 miles a gallon over the span of 300,000 miles, that truck is going to burn 30,000 gallons of diesel fuel. Well, I want to find out how much product do you have to buy, or what cost is it to treat 30,000 gallons of diesel fuel. So the chart I have on the screen now is showing that. So the Hot Shot Secret, it's only going to cost you $1,500 to treat your truck with Hot Shot Secret. The Archoil is going to be $3,300. The PowerService is going to be $3,000. The Opti Lube is going to be $7,500. And finally, the Stanadyne is $4,500. So hopefully that gives you guys some sort of idea of, kind of the lifetime cost, if you will, of using one of these additives. And when you start doing the math on a fuel pump replacement, especially if you have a fuel pump failure that sends all that metal shrapnel throughout the fuel system, like I was talking about at the beginning of the video, it suddenly makes a ton of sense to go use an additive. If, even the most expensive one here, like I was talking about with the call with Lake, was the Opti Lube. You're still net positive $2,500 if you spend $7,500 on Opti Lube. And again, the Opti Lube was by far and away the best lubricant here as far as the diesel fuel was concerned. So guys, as far as final results here, coming in 5th place is going to be the Stanadyne Performance Formula. If you guys noticed, this jug is half full, is because, well, before this video started and I had all this information, this is what I was using in my own truck. And guys, based on the testing that we saw, it really didn't affect the lubricity of the fuel at all. Perhaps if we had tested more samples, we might have saw more of a change, but the sample that we submitted to Southwest Research, it didn't show any change in lubricity overall versus standard pump diesel. It did help the cetane of the fuel, but unfortunately it had the least improvement in cetane versus any other product here. And when you couple that with the fact that this is to treat your fuel with this stuff, it adds about 15 cents a gallon to your fuel costs, and you look at the performance of it, frankly, it's just simply not worth it. The biggest real pro to this product versus some of the other ones here, with the exception of the Opti Lube, is the Stanadyne product does have anti-gel in it. So that could justify some of that additional cost that you're seeing, because these 3 products you see in the center, which were the cheapest in the test, these don't have any anti-gel in them. So yeah, this is a functional anti-gel. It's a cetane improver. They claim a lubricity improvement, but unfortunately, we didn't see a change in the lubricity of the fuel overall. So coming in 4th place, guys, is going to be the Hot Shot Secret EDT. This stuff was by far and away the cheapest in the test. To add that stuff to your fuel, it added, I think, like 5 cents a gallon to your base fuel cost. So it is extraordinarily cheap. It's easy to find. Like, I saw that one at Walmart. It did have a tangible improvement in lubricity and the cetane of the fuel. It just simply wasn't as much of an improvement as some of the other stuff here. Granted, it was the cheapest by a wide margin. I think the next closest one was the PowerService, and the PowerService added 10 cents a gallon to the fuel cost, and the Hot Shots was only 5. So when you start looking at budget options, it is a good budget option. I would hold off for a better performing product, but again, it's not a bad product. It did do what it said it would do. It just didn't do as much as some of the other products here. So in 3rd place is going to be the PowerService Diesel Clean and Cetane Boost. This product, guys, actually had the highest level of cetane improvement out of anything in the test. It was slightly ahead of the XPD by, I think it was like 0.8 of a point or something like that. It was very, very close between the XPD and the PowerService. And the nice thing is the PowerService was 10 cents a gallon over your base fuel cost. So it's gonna, if your base fuel cost is $3.50 a gallon, treating it with PowerService, it's gonna turn your fuel cost into $3.60 a gallon. So when you're looking at it from that perspective, yes, it did add a tangible amount of lubricity, and it had the largest amount of cetane improvement out of anything in the test. 2nd place, guys, is going to be the Archoil AR6500, and to me, this was one of the bigger shocks in the test to me, because when you start looking at the lubricity improvement using the Archoil product, it had a very high increase in lubricity versus the other 3 products I have sitting over here to the left. The difference is the cost on this product is 11 cents a gallon. So when you're comparing that to Stanadyne that did virtually nothing, the Stanadyne was 15 cents a gallon and this was only 11. It did have a tangible increase in cetane. It wasn't quite as much as the PowerService or the XPD, but I do believe it performed better than the Hot Shot Secrets as far as cetane improvement as well. So if you guys are, to me, if you guys are looking at the best like budget option, I'm gonna push you guys to Archoil, because frankly, when you look at the lubricity of it and the cetane improvement on it versus the cost per gallon, it's very, very hard to beat that product. Now, if you guys want the absolute best performing, money, no object, I do not care. I just want the best possible stuff to put in my engine and my fuel system. It's going to be the Opti Lube XPD. This stuff absolutely crushed it. The lubricity improvement that we saw using this product, it literally cut the wear scar versus base diesel fuel in half. So you're doubling the life of the fuel system by using this product based on that testing that we saw. And the cetane improvement using this product was just behind the PowerService, but I will say, unfortunately, it is by far the most expensive thing to use in the test. So it costs you 25 cents a gallon in addition to your base fuel cost to use this product in your truck, or, you know, whatever you're going to put it in. So it is quite expensive, but you know what? You're getting something for that additional cost. And the other thing that I will say about that additional cost is this, again, like the Stanadyne down at the end, this does have an anti-gel in it. They claim it'll go down to 10 below. That's 10 below Fahrenheit. So yes, you can use this as an anti-gel. So that may make up some of the costs that you're seeing at this one being, you know, 25 cents a gallon versus something like Hot Shots, which is 5 cents a gallon. So hopefully that gives you guys some sort of clarity as to, do these products actually work? Should you use them in your vehicle? That answer is going to be an overwhelming yes. And guys, if you haven't done it at this point, please go down in the description and check out Lake's channel. In addition to Lake's channel, will have links to all the products that you see here if you want to pick any of this stuff up. And as always, guys, if you guys like the video, hit like. If you want to see more content, go down and hit subscribe. Thanks for watching, guys.